Redditors who have been in coma for a long time, greater than 1 year, what was it like to wake up again? And how did you adjust to literally a long fast forward? I had no idea where I was. I had no idea what happened. Months later I was still learning about who did, or didn't, visit, pray, call, ask. Finances were a total mess, trust me, companies do not care. Massive debt and financial penalties. And took over 18 months to get a job after painful physical rehabilitation and explaining over and over and over that I was in a coma, not just not working. Then COVID.
Hollywood's depiction of waking from a coma is shockingly wrong. I was really stunned when my friend was in one for about a month and had to relearn virtually every basic function.
Does it count if you can't remember a single thing for 6 to 8 weeks? I was technically out, but my wife says she had a conversation with me every day. I don't remember anything but was medically sedated for almost 2 months after getting hit by a car cycling. Anyway, I couldn't walk or use any extremities upon coming to. Extreme muscle atrophy required almost 2 years of PT to regain full independence. Not fun at all.
My sister was in a car accident and sustained a massive head injury. She was in a coma for over 5 months. Waking up from a coma doesn't happen suddenly. It's gradual. She had to relearn everything starting with swallowing. She's missing her last year of high school and she cannot remember many things since her accident. Her short-term memory was damaged. Her damaged memory makes her very frustrated. Edit to add. Her accident was in 1994. She graduated in 1993. She cannot remember grade 12. Sorry for the confusing statement. This was stunning for the family because she had just graduated. That whole year was gone. Second edit. The story of what happened. That weekend my sister had double booked herself. She was supposed to head to a car rally with me and my husband. She came to me and asked me if it was alright if she went to Whitby's with her best friends. This has bothered me for decades. If I had been a Beep sister I would have told her to postpone her trip and come with us. But I wasn't and I'm still not like that. I told her to go have fun with her friends. That Saturday we got the call that she had been in a car accident. She was traveling down a rural highway when a lady blew a stop sign. My sister swerved to the left to avoid her. She's left-handed. Her car started to spin. She tried to correct and ended up swerving the car into oncoming traffic. She hit a pickup truck that was driving in the opposing lane and her car crumbled. She had her driver's side window partially down. Her head slammed down on the open window and she was cut from her ear to her chin. She was thrown against her friend in the passenger seat and broke her clavicle and her pelvis. Her friends had minor injuries. She was wearing her seatbelt but the twisty nature of the collision swung her from side to side. They used the jaws of life to extricate her from the vehicle. She was posturing, which is what happens when a person has a massive head injury. The emergency crew had a ferry return to dock so they could load her on. For 3 days we didn't know if she was going to survive. They drilled a hole in her head to relieve the pressure that was building due to her brain bleeding. She survived. Our family has been by her side ever since.
I was out for just over a month. It was surreal, like a dream I couldn't quite wake up from. When I woke up, my arms and legs didn't work and my vision and thoughts were really fuzzy. I thought I was out for a few days and was unpleasantly surprised to know it has been over a month.
I was out for 40 days after a motorcycle accident, but I don't remember much for about 6 weeks after that as well. I was sedated with ketamine and a mix of opiates and started to wean off of them while still on a ventilator and ECMO. I was extremely confused and seeing doubles, so I was terrified. Communicating was very hard because of the confusion and that I couldn't talk or write. The thing I remember most vividly is the insane hallucinations I had as a result of the ketamine. I was hallucinating something that was making me freak out and try to rip the tubes out of me, including my ventilator, chest tubes, and arterial lines, so they had no choice but to tie my limbs down and put boxing gloves on my hands. I had no idea I was doing any of that, but I had moments where I was significantly more aware of what was going on, which were so frustrating because I was completely tied down and again, couldn't communicate. The doctors and nurses kept trying to explain to me what I was doing and that I needed to stop, but I did not understand. I felt like I was being tortured and I couldn't understand why. At the time of my accident, I was in an online relationship that had become very rocky. I had booked a flight to meet the girl and my accident happened the day before my flight. This was only somewhat of a coincidence, as I was riding my motorcycle extremely recklessly due to my emotions and frustration in the relationship, and with my life for other reasons. My family knew about my relationship and was able to tell her, but it wasn't until about 3 months after the day of the accident that I talked to her for the first time by sending her a video. One of my respiratory therapists put a device on my tracheostomy so I was able to talk. This was an extremely emotional moment and my mom was the first person to hear my voice. I used the device to talk on the phone with the girl, but it was difficult because the ventilator was loud and the device did not sound like my normal voice. My relationship with her was not the same and not recoverable. In hindsight, this was for the better, but in the moment, despite all the terrible things I was experiencing, the feeling of having lost the connection with this girl who was my first love was awful. By this time I was becoming completely aware of what I did and what happened, and extremely conscious of what I had put my mom through as she had been by my side every day in the hospital not knowing if I would survive, or if I had sustained significant brain damage. After 5 months in the hospital I was transferred to a rehabilitation facility, and 2 weeks later, December 2019, discharged home with a wheelchair and walker. I was gaining the ability to walk short distances on my own and even decided to start college again. Then COVID hit, and I also experienced some unfortunate medical complications that kept me in and out of the hospital for most of 2020. This is all very recent, but every aspect of my life has changed post-accident. My finances are in ruin. My physical health and pain is terrible, but given the fact that I have all my limbs and can still walk, I feel like I can't complain. I value time completely differently because of my continuing medical complications. I don't think I will live very long. It's a lot harder for me to get angry or upset about anything because it all feels insignificant compared to being tied down, unable to communicate, and in pain. I could write a book filled with details of the past and how I'm doing now, so I'll cut it off here. Edit should clarify that I can speak perfectly fine now with my original voice. My tracheostomy hole closed well. While it was closing, I could force air out of the tiny hole and it sounded like a kazoo. I get tired of hearing myself talk about this as it's become my entire identity and I don't like that feeling. Someday I'll make a blog detailing some of my unique medical experiences so the next me won't feel so alone when they Google their issues. Thanks everyone for the kind words.
I feel like the state should automatically give you disability or at least assign you a caseworker to suspend your bills and store your stuff while you're in a coma. Like, there should be a system where the hospital logs you as a coma patient and then social services step in. WTF.
I was in a coma for 3 weeks. Not that long, but my dreams made me feel like I was out for decades. I was really confused and didn't understand where I was or why.
My uncle and dad were in a terrible wreck when they were both 19. My dad was out about 6 to 7 hours, remembers nothing. My uncle was in a coma for 6 weeks. He said he could hear every conversation, knew when people visited him, but he couldn't communicate or move a muscle. He can still recall conversations people had while visiting him. He said his greatest fear was they would think he was dead and bury him. He was terrified because he couldn't react or communicate and didn't know what they would do with him. Then he woke up. He had some lifelong disabilities but went on to become the VP at his company in Texas. Edit. Wow, I had no idea you awesome people would give my uncle's story so much response. Thanks for the awards.
Well, while I was comatose, my girlfriend married a billionaire, a nerd took my job, and the worst part was my butler died. I miss you every day, Woodhouse.
Best friend of an old colleague of mine who I met a few times at drinks etc. She was in a car accident when she was about 20, spent a few months in a coma. Upon waking up, apparently her whole personality changed, especially her goals and stuff. Before the accident she wanted me to a teacher and was in uni, but after the accident she couldn't think of anything worse and wanted to become a hairdresser. She couldn't remember a lot of her teenage years and she said some things like her favorite food and TV shows had changed, from what people told her she liked beforehand, and taste in music. I was absolutely flabbergasted by what she was telling me.
Most people who are in a coma that long will have mush for brains. It's also extremely rare to regain any degree of consciousness after a whole year. If they do, they will not prioritize catching up on world events and TV shows. They will be learning to speak, eat, move, recognize friends and family, the names items around them, etc.
I went comatose twice in my life, 7 to 10 hours the time, and I've no recollection of the second time. Both originating from the same head condition, hydrocephalic pressurization, and I ended up a potato. The waking up from the first coma, I was dazed but functional. Came to and tried to figure out why I was tied down to the hospital bed while I've got all my family members standing in my room crying. I could talk and think, it was just the haze of coming out of anesthesia that made things difficult that time. I was only in the hospital a week, but had to relearn how to walk. The second coma, I have no recollection of. It's like my brain intentionally decided to shield me from the event, but from what I've gathered, I went from functioning normal up to the day before, told family I was going to take a nap and proceeded to sleep for about approx 18 hours. My mom and brother managed to get me to wake up long enough to walk out to their car, while my boyfriend pulled up to check up on me. Some hours later, after the second surgery, I wake up and I'm talking, conversing to everyone like normal. My partner says it was terrifying to experience, but the absolute worst part was after coming to, I kept saying I wanted Cece's pizza cause it just looked so tasty.
My mom was intubated on, like March 11, 2020 with COVID. When she pulled through and woke up, thank God, it was April 1st. The first thing she saw was a woman in a beekeeping outfit asking her what year it was. She was so confused. When she went into the hospital, there was no PPE gear, so when she woke up she thought this lady had a beekeeper's outfit. She then decided she wanted to be married to my dad again. They got divorced 6 years before after 38 years of marriage. She called him and said, "Fly over here, let's work it out." He was like, "You don't understand, no one can fly. All planes are grounded." She was like, "What? That's ridiculous. There must be a way." She had no concept and missed how the world completely shut down in a few short weeks.
The lamp wasn't real. Edit, link for those who don't know the.
Doesn't work like Steven Seagal in Hard to Kill. Dude wakes up fighting people.
Not me, but my grandfather woke up from a coma a few months ago. He was in a coma for 13 months. He had a brain tumor and he had to do a surgery to remove it. The surgery was a success, but apparently one of the surgeons damaged his brain accidentally, and because of that he was in a coma for 13 months. When he woke up he could barely speak and he had to make a recovery at the hospital. After 2 or 3 months of recovery he looked a lot better, but unfortunately for our family he was a completely different person when he started to speak more clearly, which was very sad. But when his memories came back he was acting like before the coma, which made everyone in our family very happy again. I asked him a few weeks how was the experience. He said it was confusing and strange, but at the end it was all good because everything is back to normal.
It wasn't long, however, I was unconscious for 4 days in June. The first memory I have waking up is that one of my aunts, and one of my uncles, neither of which were there in the ICU, they are married to other people and wouldn't have ever been together, were wearing top hats and helping get me changed while trying to cheer me up and feed me. Then there was one point where I thought I was in hotel themed after one of the Super Mario worlds. I have very vivid dreams of being there with the people I was with before I ended up unconscious. Only to wake up and realize I was in a hospital and was very, very confused how I got from the hotel, that didn't exist, to the hospital. When I first woke up and regained consciousness, which I have no recollection, my cousin said that I looked at her, confused, then smiled, while excitedly saying Hans. No clue who Hans is. My cousin's name is Kristen. I'm still adjusting in a lot of ways 12 weeks later. 010 do not recommend. Edit, added details.
My friend is a nurse, and when my mom was sick and we were talking about end-of-life plans, she told me that being in a coma is very traumatizing. The dreamlike state that you are constantly in can cause ICU-induced PTSD, because the patients are living on high-dose sedatives.
My literal transition was pretty rough, seeing as how I hadn't read or written anything for over a year.
I was in a coma for a short amount of time. I think I still had awake, sleep cycles. During what I'd describe as my awake cycles I remember my grandmother talking to me. I have no clue what she was saying to this day, but I knew she was there. But there wasn't really here in my world. Difficult to explain, almost like dreamlike. Either way, I knew I wasn't alone. 8 years later my brother got into a coma and almost died. Just as she never left my side, she never left his either. I was there a lot as well. He also describes remembering that she was there, but also unable to remember what she was saying. But we both knew we weren't alone. I think it helps that we are both very close to this woman and we both have a very, very strong bond with her.
Not me but my uncle, so I don't know that much, but he just couldn't fathom the idea that he wasn't a teen anymore. He couldn't remember anything from years but could vividly remember beep that had happened like 40 years prior. He just kept asking where his mom and dad were, and my dad got tired of seeing him get upset every time he found out they were dead.
Not as long, but I was in a medically induced coma when I was 7 for a major heart surgery. Back 1997, and they basically had to stop my heart to get it fixed. I was only 7 and chances of me making it was 50 to 70%. I was fortunate enough to be a demonstration subject for an Australian heart surgeon teaching my local doctors, so everything was free. Only 10 of us were chosen, and I remember some of my ward mates didn't make it. I remember one family tried to sue the hospital for malpractice or something but never succeeded. Anyway, I was told I was in a coma and didn't wake up until 3 weeks later. Gave my family a lot of heartache. I had to relearn walking, and it was so bizarre knowing you should know this but your limbs are not responding to your thoughts. It was frustrating and difficult. Relearning how to hold your utensils and particularly chopsticks. Aiming your spoon into the soup bowl and then missing your mouth when you try to eat, then making a mess. I was still being reprimanded for making a mess. By the head nurse and my family. Gotta love the tough love see mentality. I was also made fun by my family for walking like a penguin. Love them, but in retrospect it was so cruel of a joke and no one thought of refraining from such teasing on a young traumatized kid. My family have done a lot for me, but I still wish they hadn't made fun of my recovery journey.
I wanted to comment, imagine if you just skipped whole COVID thing. That'd be so dope. Then I read through some of the comments and saw that waking up from coma is actually way more beep up than I thought it would be. My dumbass thought that you wake up and be fuzzy for a week or so. After that you're back to usual stuff. It didn't even cross my mind that relearning basic functions was a thing. All you people in the comments, I'm sorry that you had to go through all the pain, and I wish you all the best in the future.
May your day be filled with joy and happiness. And please remember to subscribe to Upvote for the best quality content every day.